coming out. Before we start, I know that there are numerous students here from numerous different classes, various opportunities for credit and whatnot. If you have not already signed in with your respective faculty member, if we could hold off until the end, that would be much appreciated. At the front of the room here, we have sign-in sheets for Dr. Thomas and Dr. Brown. There are various other opportunities floating around throughout the room that I've seen. So wait until we're done and trying to find the right person to get that credit. Another order of business here real quick. Sigma Xi members, officers and members, you should have received an email from me last week about the opportunity to purchase t-shirts and or polos with our logo on them. That due date is Friday. I'll send you a reminder tomorrow. If you're not a member and you would like this opportunity, let me know. I will get in touch with you. Right, there we go, D&T, awesome. Yeah, if you want to be supportive, that would be great too. If you want to be supportive and become a member, that would be even better. Chat with myself and or one of the other officers that's present this evening, and we can get in touch with you about how to do that as well. So I don't want to waste too much time here. I'll briefly introduce our guest speaker. Dr. June Pilcher is here from Clemson University this evening. She is a Sigma Xi Distinguished National Lecturer, and it's a real privilege to be able to bring her in this evening to talk to you about that tricky human, Brian. Dr. Pilcher is a biopsychologist who's interested in health and interested in the effects of stress on performance, behavior, thinking, etc. So I don't want to butcher her work too much any further, so I'm just going to hand it over to her. Dr. Pilcher.
Thank you very much. I think, can everybody hear? My phone is working, I think. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming. This is like a really crowded room. Thank you for making that happen for us. And thanks for the invitation. I really do appreciate it. I've been telling them all day today that I just enjoy doing these talks for Sigma Xi groups and the various ones that I've done over the last few years. And I mean, I just enjoy coming and talking to students at different universities, talking to faculty at different universities, and just seeing, both similarities and differences than what I experience day to day at Clemson. It's really quite interesting. One of the things for me that kind of relates to that, I think, is that I'm always thinking about what is it to be human, right? And certainly my research, as we were talking about, is very stress-related. I think that's a good way to define it in this very broad area. But one of the things that I think about, read about, write about, talk about, write a lot, is just kind of broadly human nature. What is it to be human? And I think this is kind of that side effect of getting a PhD in biopsychology, which is really brain and behavior. What does the brain do? What does the behavior do? What do they do to each other? Right? And I'm just fascinated by what the human brain does to us. Right? And I say to us. And it's doing things for us as well. But it's also doing an awful lot to us. And I think that's an important differentiation to make. And I think that there's a lot of things that the human brain is doing automatically that many people are unaware of. Right? They just go through their life, their brain is doing what it does, and the person is kind of living in almost a make-believe world. Like, I'm in control. I call that a make-believe world, because I don't really think we're much in control. I think we have what I call fleeting moments of rationality. Right? And notice I say fleeting, because I think it really rapidly disappears and we're back to our true animal emotional selves, right? Where emotions rule it all. Right? And that's why I like to talk about this. Now, the stuff that I'm talking about today, it's not unique, but I think I guess that's what I kind of like about it, is that it's not, like brand new or special in some weird way, yet every single one of us experiences this every single day, over and over and over again, repeatedly. And if we're not aware, it will run away with us. Right? And we're thinking, I'm in control, when in reality, automated behavior generated from this back part of the brain is handling everything. You know, this back part of the brain like your pet alligator. Yeah, same thing, right? Yeah, so let's talk about it a little bit. I've got an odd clicker here, so I'll see if I can make it work. Let's see here. Go. No. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, I bet. No? Okay, what am I doing?
We've made it angry.
Did I turn it off somehow?
I don't think so. Let's see.
It doesn't seem to be working.
When in doubt, unplug it and plug it back.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah. Because we might have made it angry when we were playing with it there.
Okay, you're
Yeah,
right. There we go.
yeah. Let's try it. Okay, let's try that. And then down. Yeah. It's not liking us. You try it. It's not liking us.
Very strange.
It hates me. So that's my brain, taking everything personally. It's okay, I'll use this.
Yep.
It's okay.
We tried.
Yeah, exactly, no big deal. Okay, now, okay, we did activate my music library. Okay, seriously. I don't think you can see it, but I see my music library here, which I never used, but we activated it. All
That's
right.
probably why it's not working.
Oh, it might be, but don't worry about it,
It's
we
just
got it.
clicked off.
Okay, so, we got it. All right, so one of the things I like to first point out to people when I'm doing a very broad general talk like this is that this is the human brain, right? Now this is a specialized mapping technique that allows you to see the many connections in the human brain. And as I have on the slide, one of the things I like to emphasize is that everything we are is the result of these neurons communicating, right? And that's something that's often surprising to many people. Okay, probably not the PhDs in the room, but to many people that are not PhDs, especially psychologists in the room, but to many other people, they don't think about the brain that way, right? They think about the brain in a different way. They categorize it in different ways, when in reality, everything we are, everything that it is to be human, every thought, decision, drive, your desire for, brownies, right? All of that is because neurons are communicating. And when those neurons are not communicating correctly, things go bad really, really fast, right? But even when they're communicating correctly, things can be interesting. We have to be careful. And that's kind of what this talk is about. It's like, okay, the neurons are communicating, but what are they doing? Right? What is happening? So first off, let's think about what do we think about when we think about how the brain works? And this is a common thought. Well, okay, this was a little bit outdated. This is kind of what I probably thought at 18. The brain is a bunch of filing cabinets with papers in them. Okay, then, technology improved. So we started thinking about the brain as being gears working together, right? That was the next image or the idea of the brain. And then, of course, modern times, the brain is a computer and we're storing things, right? All that kind of stuff. But of course, the brain is not any of that. What it is a bunch of neurons. That's all it is a bunch of neurons. And the neurons are, for the most part, if you're sitting in this room, right, your neurons are doing just fine. Okay? They're activated, they're doing what they should be doing, they're inhibiting what they should be inhibiting, right? Everything's going fine. It's not a computer, right? It's certainly not drawers with filing cabinets that you can pull out and find the right memory, for example. Memory is much more complex and fallible than that. Yeah, flawed, let's say, than that. So what do we think about the brain? Well, in essence, that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, that's okay, I'll go back. But in essence, this is the human brain. So this is a slide where the eyes are over here. Here's the nose, you can just see it. And this is the human brain. Right? And when I talk about, as I go through today, as I talk about like that really bottom part of the brain that's kind of doing a lot of automatic processing for us, what I'm talking about is this kind of area in here. And that's often people talk about that as the alligator brain, because in essence, alligators have that as well. Right? What they don't have is the rest of all of that huge part that makes us human. Right? The rest of that huge part, though, is what gives us the ability to override the alligator. Right? So the alligator is saying, eat 5 pieces of brownie. Right? And we can say, no, I am trying not to gain weight. Right? That's it. It's hard to deny ourselves that. It really is. Okay, some people seem to make it look easy. Most of us, it's hard. Right? And that's just that differentiation in the brain. And this brain, now I have to go back because somehow my slide didn't seem to work quite right here, but there we go. Within that brain are just a bunch of neurons, right? That's it. Billions of them. Right? Now, of course, all mammals have billions of neurons. all of them. Humans probably really don't have that many more than most other mammals. It varies a little bit from species to species. What we do have is tons of connections, right? And we have many more than probably most other species that we've examined anyway. And we think that it's the way the neurons are connected that gives humans this complexity level that other mammals don't have as much of. Now, other mammals are complex too. As we know, when we train rats in a lab or something, or we have our dog at home, they're complex, and mammals are complex. We just, maybe we take it to a slightly bigger level, right? A little bit more complex. But in the end, it all goes back to that neuron, right? And it all goes back to how are the neurons talking to each other. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go forward a little bit. There we go. Okay. So, what does all this mean? Well, what I'm going to talk about today is this very broad picture of the brain, because we could approach this from a much more, a different level, where we're looking at different parts of the brain, things like that. But today what I wanted to focus on is this very broad picture of the human brain, and what is it doing? And one of the simplest, and perhaps I think, and you guys decide for yourselves, but I think a very useful way to think about the human brain is this differentiation between what is often called, at least in the scientific world, as System 1 and System 2. Right? You can see people talking about this all over popular press. They're not often using the terms that I have here, but they're basically talking about this ongoing issue and ongoing communication between these two systems, where System 1 is this kind of more emotional side of us, this intuitive side of us, where we just think we know something. You know, I just feel this way, and my feelings are correct, and we hear people saying that, right? You know, I just feel this way. I don't need data. I just feel this way, right? That's that System 1. One thing to, well, several things to point out. It's unconscious, so that means it's always happening, and it's automatic, so that means it's always happening. Right? You're getting the kind of clue here, right? We can literally never turn it off. It does not turn off. There is no off switch for System 1. Right? It's always operating. And that's a good thing, and probably was a very good thing for our early ancestors who needed to make very fast decisions, because after all, you see the tiger, and you ask yourself, I wonder if they ate. Okay, no you don't, because that's not System 1. System 1 says, oh my God, get out of here, right? You know, run. That's System 1, right? Where System 1 is going, this is it, it's a tiger, I'm under threat. And after all, we're the descendants of those people that ran like crazy. The ones that didn't, oh no, we're not their descendants, right? They're long gone on the savannas in Africa, right? They're feeding the flowers, right? They're having it, right? I mean, seriously, right? We're the descendants of the people whose System 1 kept them alive. And I think that's an important thing to remember. System 1 is designed in an environment that's probably quite different than this one, right? To keep us alive. And it does a quite good job at it. The problem is, in our modern environment, it tricks us. It's flawed. It still keeps you alive after all. If you almost get hit by a car, what are you doing? Right? You're reacting, and you're moving, and you're getting out of the way. It's keeping you alive. Right? That's its job. But the problem is that that argument with your roommate over who ate the last piece of pizza is also a tiger, because System 1's kind of stupid that way. I mean, it literally thinks everything's a tiger, and it's reacting, right? And you feel it, come on, you feel it. Every time you get a grade that you think is 2 points lower than what you wanted, System 1 activates and screams, oh, I deserved 5 more points. Yeah, because it thinks it's a tiger. It can't tell. Yeah, think about it, right? It doesn't understand. Another popular, favorite example of mine, I think I was talking to some of you guys about this before, but you know, somebody cutting you off with their car, right? God forbid somebody cut you off with their car, right? Because after all, what did you have to do? You had to put your foot on the brake for a second. Or maybe 2. Or, oh my God, 3. Oh my gosh, I mean, this is life-threatening, right? And people pull out guns, and seriously, right? It's crazy. That is System 1, right? Automatic, you can't stop it. Right? Be aware, right? Well, I should say we can't stop it from reacting, I think we can stop it from doing something stupid like pulling out a gun. That's system 2. Right? So system 2 is that more reflectful, but also effortful. Mind you, have to remind yourself, wait a minute, it's not a tiger. And guys, I still do that. Right? I mean, I'll be looking at a manuscript I have to write for the other professors who understand this totally, right? I'm looking at this manuscript now, and my heart starts to beat, I'm going, oh my gosh. And then I remind myself, this is not a tiger. This is my computer, and I'm at my desk, and I'm sitting on a chair, and it's air conditioned. Right? It's not a tiger, right? But the brain is not. It's pretty stupid about this, right? It is, yeah. But that's what I think that's our chance, is to engage that effortful mind. System 2. System 2 is conscious. It is intentional. You have to purposely say to yourself, yes, he cut me off, but all it did was take me 1 second of my life. 1 second. And as soon as you put it that way, you start to calm down. System 1 starts to calm down. Right? Controlled actions. Another thing about system 2 that's important, and I have it there like after the ... is it's lazy. Right? And therein is the issue. Because system 1 is running all the time, automatically in the background. And it's reacting to everything as if it's a tiger. It literally can't tell the difference. It's a tiger, I'm going to die. I'm going to react. So it's reacting. System 2 can be brought forward, but it's essentially lazy. And I often talk about this with students. I mean, our brains are essentially lazy. That's what they are. We want to get by with minimal effort. And in many ways, that's wise, right? It is. You know, don't expend energy that you don't need to expend, for example. Especially in our, again, long ago ancestors' time, when we're talking about limited resources. Right? Nowadays, you just go to McDonald's and get 2,000 calories by using 1 calorie to move your finger on the, window button, right? Yeah, 1 calorie for 2,000. Yeah, and therein is one of our problems, right? Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's important, once you start to look at it this way and remind yourself that this is what's happening, right? Most of our lives, and we were talking a little bit about this at dinner, but most of our lives is this automatic system 1. The only question is, do we catch it? Right? It's doing things all the time, and I'm going to give you some examples next. It's activated, it's doing things. The only question is, do we catch ourselves? Before we do something stupid, like pull out a gun at a traffic light. Yeah, seriously, right? I mean, we know it happens and it's stupid. Yeah. And that's where we got to try to think about it, think how it's going to work better. So a few examples of this. So we've got this. So again, with system 1 and 2, and I have up here with wisdom, because I think that in general, I'm probably better at this than most of you in this hall. Not all of you, but most of you. Only because, I very loosely term wisdom, because I'm not sure I'm wise at all, but it's just experience, right? We start to recognize when we said something stupid, we feel bad, we start to try to pull back from doing that again, right? That kind of thing. And that's that unconscious processing versus conscious processing. Are we aware of what we're saying before we say it? Think before we talk. And as soon as you think, that's system 2. Right? That's effortful, and it takes energy. Right? And you know it took energy. The other thing I'd point out here, that when I talk to you, or you're talking to each other, whatever, and you're talking about yourself in some way, that's system 2. Right? You're defining yourself as what you understand, which is what system 2, the conscious processing, is doing. What you don't do is define yourself as this unconscious processing of system 1. Keep that in mind as I give you some examples here. It's rare, we can, but I think we have to train ourselves. We don't typically classify ourselves and talk about ourselves as the processing that system 1 is doing. And yet it's doing it again, automatic, unconscious. Unless we really stop ourselves. We can become more conscious of it, like that upper part of the brain we talked about. But again, it's effortful. And it's easier not to do it, so yeah we often don't. All right, so a couple kind of characteristics that I hope will be useful for you to think about. One is that in general, system 1, again, I keep repeating it, but it's automatic, unconscious, it's easy. One of the things it does, and I call it this, and other people do too, it's not just me, it's lots of people are doing this, but this idea of system one being the storytelling brain. And this is that idea that our brain wants to see stories, it wants to see patterns. It seeks them out. And it seeks them out so much that it sees patterns where there are no patterns. Right? It's just random crap. Seriously. Life is filled with a bunch of random and often bad junk happening. And yet our brain will, because of system one, automatically seek out a pattern that doesn't exist. And once it finds a pattern, then it hangs on for dear life. Right? We get a belief, and in fact there's good bit of evidence that shows that if we have a belief that actually has very little, if any, evidence, we hang on even harder. Because somehow that's my belief. And it's mine and you can't have it. You know, that kind of thing. I'm not going to change my mind. Right? Right? And that's a hard thing to do. A side effect of this is that what I suspect probably every single one of us in this room, even the other PhD psychologists here, we all live in a world that our brain has put together for us through this storytelling effort that is really much nicer than the world that we're in. Because our brain wants to see something meaningful. It doesn't want to accept that life isn't meaningful, beyond what we make. Right? That there's got to be something else out there. It doesn't want that. It doesn't like that idea. It makes us quite uncomfortable even saying it. I mean, even me saying it multiple times in talks, it's still hard for me to say it, because it's uncomfortable. It's much nicer to think there's meaning out there, and there's a purpose out there. I'm not so sure there is, but you guys think about it. Yeah, I'm not here to give you answers, just to give you some ideas. Right? So one thing to think about with the System 1 brain is it's always making up stories. And it's seeing stories that are not there, I promise you. And these are probably things that everybody's experienced. You know, like you might meet somebody, you come up with an idea about them, and then over the next 6 months you realize that your idea was wrong. Whether, you know, that the story you made up about them is just simply wrong. Right? And that's hard to, yeah, it's hard to see that. It's hard to recognize it. It takes effort to see that. All right, so that's like an overall kind of broad idea of what System 1 is. Now System 2, of course, is that more thoughtful part. So we talked about this a little bit, where kind of, I mean, System 1 is really throughout the brain, basically. It's all over, but often we talk about it as being this more lower part of the brain, as so much automated processing is occurring. Where System 2, we typically talk about that as being in the frontal lobe, so right here behind the forehead. And that's the part of the human brain that, you know, largely makes us human, right? It allows us our you know, truly human capabilities like planning. You know, as much as I love my dog, I don't think he's planning for retirement, right? And I am, right? I mean, well, you know, seriously, right? I mean, other mammals have a forebrain too, but ours is a little bit different. Yeah. And so that frontal lobe, also, like we call it the forebrain, but the frontal lobe, it's that kind of thoughtful, reflective part of the human brain. And again, it's part of System 2. This is mostly where System 2 is probably coming out of. But I also point out here that it's like these fleeting attempts at rationality. Because I do not think humans are really rational. We are emotional with fleeting moments of rationality, only if we try really hard. It's far easier to be emotional. It makes much more sense to be emotional. After all, I'm hurt, you did X, you know, that was mean. Yeah, instead of stopping and saying, okay, maybe you were just having a bad day, maybe you've just been fired from your job, you know, all these other possibilities. You know, he cut me off in the car, but maybe he's on his way to the hospital because his wife is giving birth. Right? Those are all these things that are possibilities that System 2 can help us understand, but I do think it's fleeting. Meaning we never reach the goal line and spike the ball. Right? We never say, I got it. I'm done with this. Right? You know, I wish I could say that to you guys, especially the younger folks, you know, because the older folks in the hall know exactly what I mean. But the younger folks, I wish I could say, you know, after this talk, you're going to understand this, and life is going to be so much easier. And I don't think it works that way at all. I don't think we ever spike the ball. We have to constantly try. And that's not easy, and again, that takes effort. Yeah, makes it hard. And of course, the lazy part is up there. The other thing I wanted to point out, because this is kind of interesting, there's a wide range of research about this, but kind of in general, I think it's pretty clear that our brain, the human brain, and really all mammal brains for that matter, really mature from back to front, right? And that's why, like a 10-year-old can get on a video game and beat you, right? Because that back part of the brain that's controlling that hand-eye, visual processing, that matures quite early. But this forebrain part that's giving us rationality, that's giving us consequences, if you don't turn in your paper on time, you fail, right? I mean, that kind of stuff, that's the last part of the brain to mature. And by mature, it never fully matures. We're always learning, right? I mean, that's what's special about being human. Really all mammals, but again, humans take learning to a new level, kind of thing. But it's not that the brain is totally mature, but that the rate at which it's maturing changes. So as we get into puberty, the rate at which this front part of the brain is making new connections, remember the importance of connections, right? And it's making those connections more efficient, is probably a good word for it, without trying to tell you all the physiology of what's happening. Right? That speeds up as we get into adolescence, so that the kind of the rate of maturation is like a slope, right, going up. And then as you get a little bit older, it never really stops, but it definitely slows down. Right? Does that make sense to you guys? Right? So, what do I mean by older when it's starting to slow down, so that there's some level of maturation that has occurred? Varies a little bit. Women typically about 25, right? We start to see a clear decrease in that slope of the brain kind of making connections and that kind of stuff. For men, somewhere 28 to 30-ish, a little bit slower in men, right? We don't really know why, right? As far as I know, we don't know why. But there does seem to be a delay for men. And many people actually think about it as puberty, because women tend to go into puberty earlier, so maybe it's a physiological, just maturation process. And they'll start a little bit later, so they end a little bit later. Something as simple as that, right? The point here that I'm trying to make when I talk to, especially with college students in the classroom, is that your frontal lobe is still maturing. And I urge you to remember that, right? It is still maturing, so you're not seeing consequences as well as you will in 5 years, right? When you're 30, you'll think differently, and you can email me and Tony, right? Because you will. You'll think differently. We all went through it. Yeah, it's just what it is to be 20, right? Remember that when you're thinking about getting into the car with the person who you know drank too much, and you get in because you don't want to make a scene. You don't want to be the weird one who, makes a big deal out of your friend drinking, right? And then something bad happens. You don't want to be that one, right? Yeah, just think about it. Remember, the brain, and obviously it's much more mature now than when it was 16, and I often tell this to college students. Think back to when you were 15 or 16, and what things did you do then that you would never do now, right? That's that maturation, right? The brain is just recognizing, predicting, recognizing bad things happening, recognizing consequences a little bit better. Just something to consider. But I think this is also interesting from this perspective of System 2, because System 2, as much as we want to tell a 6-year-old, don't beat up on your 2-year-old brother, you can't, their brain is just not mature enough. They'll never do it. What you got to do is in some way separate them, or in some way make sure the 6-year-old has their toys over here and the 2-year-old can't get them. Whatever it is that's making the interaction happen. But you just can't expect a 6-year-old to act like an adult. They won't. They can't. Right? They'll never recognize the consequences like that. Of course, by this age, you can see the consequences. The only idea is if you act upon them, right? You should study. You know what I mean. Yeah. All right, so a few ideas of how all this plays out. What is it doing here? I think it's because it's trying to connect. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so the combination, how does System 1 and System 2 act together? Because that's really our day-to-day life. System 1 and System 2 are always activating, and at times almost like at odds with each other. Right? This is one of my favorite ones, a number of different names for it. I have to call it self-serving bias just because I think it's a little bit more descriptive and a little bit easier to remember. But this is one of my favorite ones, and actually this exact example for a student kind of orientation, where it's so common. And it's so easy for the student to say, yeah, I earned this A, yeah, this is great. But then when you didn't earn the A, right, then it's somebody else's fault, right? The teacher's fault, or your roommate's fault because they were talking, or whatever, right? And instead, of course, you can always say, it's not an external factor, it was me. I didn't study enough. I didn't prepare enough. And that's a hard thing to admit. That's a hard thing to admit. And the odd thing is, and catch it, and I challenge you students, catch it. Catch yourself thinking to yourself when you get a grade that you think you deserve better, you got a lower grade than you wanted. That reaction, and it's so fast, that is System 1 protecting you. Right? Saying, it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Catch yourself. And how many rationalizations you'll make about it. How often will you say, I don't see anything bad happening. Okay, so just making sure nothing's going to explode up here. But yeah, but just catch yourselves how quick it is to say it's the teacher's fault, right? Because that would be probably in that case the most common thing, where you attribute, hence the name of attribution error, you attribute the problem to somebody else. It wasn't me, right? It was you. And it's so common, right? Catch yourselves. Students, we do it every day. I challenge you. Catch yourselves doing it. Right? We all do it. The only question is, do we ever catch it? I like this one too, where the little boy here is saying, I have the ability to ignore my mistakes by seeing in everybody else. Again, that's very human, isn't it? We all do it. And again, this is all System 1, it's all automatic. And the reason I say, System 1 and 2 is the question is, do you challenge System 1? Right? That's the only way you're going to catch yourself. And the only way, well, I shouldn't say the only way, but an easy way to catch yourself is to ask yourself, why am I thinking this? Why am I thinking that it's the teacher's fault, or the test was too hard? That's another common one, right? Oh, the test was too hard, right? I mean, it might have been hard. I'm not saying it wasn't hard. The question is, were you prepared for it? That's the question. And you have to ask yourself that. And you just have to challenge System 1. And that's not an easy thing to do. System 1 wants to run the show, and it will, if you don't challenge it. System 2 is pretty happy about letting it go, but yeah. Let's try another one. So this is another one of my favorites, loss aversion, because I think that loss aversion is really a remarkably powerful thing that happens and explains a lot of things that happen in societies and individuals, our current society. I mean, our fear of change is loss aversion. We don't want to lose how we define America, so we're all afraid of it changing. I think that's loss aversion. Right? Loss aversion is basically, as you see up here, that we have a greater pain from loss than we do pleasure from gain. And I think all of us have experienced it. Right? We all have. You just have to kind of think about how it could have worked in your life, right? Where you might have gotten something and then had it taken away. A good example of this for a society, any society, is taxes. Right? Who likes taxes? Who wants to have their money taken away from them? Because that is loss aversion. Right? I mean, and especially when we see a tax increase. So then you're saying, oh my God, I had X amount of money and now you want me to have X minus 5 amount of money or something like that. That is loss aversion. I mean, certainly in our society right now, the fears of gun ownership. I'm in Nebraska, but it's the same in South Carolina, guys, right? Guns everywhere, yeah. But the fear of losing my guns, that is loss aversion. Even more, the fear of losing my right to have cheap, easy access to guns. That is loss aversion. You don't want to lose an ability. Not even just the object, right? But the ability to have the object. Think about it. Right? This is System 1, and it's again automatic. And I do think the only way around it is to challenge yourself, and that is using System 2, to ask yourself, why am I worried about this? What is upsetting me about this? Yeah. What would be the other side of the argument? Like about the gun issue. Is there a real reason that we need to be more careful about guns? And then you start to think about the information that's out there. It's not easy to do, but that's System 2's job. And it will if you make it. Otherwise, remember, it's lazy, and it's not going to. It's going to sit in the background and say, yeah, guns are cool. They make me feel powerful. Think about it, right? Think about it. This is what the brain is doing to us. Another one I really like. What are we doing this time? We have until 8-ish? Okay. I think we'll be okay. The combo of System 1 and 2, confirmation bias, another one of my favorites. And this gets to something I said a little bit ago, too, where I said that if we have a belief and we just hang on to it, right? Hang on to it for dear life, and particularly with beliefs that really have no evidence, that we really can't point out and explain why we believe it. We just believe it, right? Particularly in that case, we just hang on, and part of that is what we call confirmation bias. And maybe the best one to demonstrate that is the picture here on the left, this one with the red face, where you've got the belief and the facts are just bouncing off, right? They just bounce off. And again, we've probably all run into this in some way, because this can be any type of belief, it doesn't matter, there's so many of them. But the fact remains that no matter how much you try to put facts out to somebody, for them it just bounces off because they're hanging on to that belief. And in my experience anyway, at a certain point I just give up, right? I can't make somebody hear the facts, right? If all they're going to do is let them bounce off, there's not much we can say about it. Right? The other one is like the confirmation bias. It's hard to see in the upper right, where everything is saying no, 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 but they manage to fit it together in their little story-making brain to make it say yes, right? Because that's what the story-making brain does, right? And then this one, I know I'm right, I'm really right, I'm sure I'm right. Yeah, that's confirmation bias, right? That inability to step back, right? And again, to develop system 2, there's just a few things. Start asking yourself questions. Why do I believe this? What evidence do I really have? How is this true? Right? As soon as you start asking yourself that, you start to kick in system 2, and it will become, at least a little bit, and with practice, more rational. I just think it takes practice. Again, we're emotional animals. I think rationality is fleeting, but we're capable of it. System 2 can do this, if we tell it to. Another one, and again, one that's you see it quite common now. They're finally talking about it, really, is this basic idea of implicit bias. And you guys probably know what this means, right? This is pretty common now, where the idea is that System 1 automatically makes determinations, and based, dare I say it, but it's really based on visual things that we can see, right? Because that's what our brain does. Our brain is, I talk about it often, that the brain is being taken over kind of by our visual system. We have so much of the brain processing vision. And so when we see something, we react to that. And okay, obvious examples, the color of the skin, right? We see it, we react. This is an implicit bias, right? Where the idea is that there's a lot of implicit bias, but only a little bit that we can really see that might be called explicit. So there's a lot unconscious going on, or just that system 1 reaction, right, where you might feel uncomfortable about some situation, but it's almost always some type of visual event. Part of that is, of course, skin color, right? The shape of the eye, male, female, right? That is probably the deepest of all of them, in my opinion, because of the need for us to identify who's male and who's female. And you think about the importance of reproduction and the survival of the species, and I think it makes sense. Yeah, that need to make that discrimination, that knowledgeable reaction, yeah, it's there. And so it's that typical thing, right, where a guy sees another guy, just using male, female, but a guy sees another guy saying, wow, you suck at math. He doesn't say all males suck at math. Yeah, when it's a female, it's all girls suck at math, right? And it's, again, very common. Catch it. Right, it's out there everywhere. Right? Yeah, it's really quite a scary but yet interesting thing that our brains do to us automatically. But again, you can stop this, engage system 2, ask why, ask how, those kind of just very simple questions will cause system 2 to think more about this. Is it truly all girls or one girl, right? That kind of a thing. So, yeah. I often say, and I don't know about but I'll tell people when I'm talking about this kind of thing that we would discriminate by the shape of each other's small intestine if we could see it. We can't see it. But if we could, we'd say, your small intestine is smaller than mine, or your small intestine is bigger than mine, or your small intestine is longer than mine, right? We would do all of that. It would all just be automatic and it's what we do. But it sounds ridiculous when I say it that way, doesn't it? I'm not so sure skin color is any different, guys. For example. Right? Think about it, right? I just think it's what we do. I don't think it's right. Yeah, and that's the question. Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Yeah. All right. So we're getting close. We're doing good. So, this is one of my favorites. This is again that need. Is that the rain?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really loud. So this need of System 1 to develop a story. Another way that we think about that is what you see is what you get. This W-Y-S-I-W-Y-G. Okay, yeah, you got it. And basically the idea is that we will make judgments, and we do, off of extremely limited information. And we will decide what we decide. And if we get challenged, we might think it's just my intuition, it's just what I think, right? Or I have this information, it'd be something like, John likes people. Will John be a good leader? And a lot of people would say yes at that point. They never once ask themselves, what do I really want a leader to be? They think, John talks to people. Sure, what the heck, he could be a leader, right? That story is just automatic. But then you can add to it and say, well, yeah, John talks to people, but he's also like late for every appointment. Will John be a good leader? And you can really start to challenge it, right? And it's shocking how fast people will change their minds. And again, this is that what you see is what you get. And I gave an example here, an easy one, like in the news, what's actually happening, what you actually see happening, right? And I think this is something that, we just have to challenge it. Because the System 1 will take whatever very limited ideas it has, very limited information, and it will develop a story. And once it develops a story, if System 2 does not challenge it, it will hang on. And then there you are living in this kind of fake world of a story that you created, that you don't know you created, but you did. Yeah. And arguing with your little brother about your story, because your story is different than his story. Yeah. I mean, think about it, how often it happens, right? We do it. This is just to give you an idea. I've only covered a few of them. There's a bunch of these kind of, in various different ways to think about and define these different ways that the brain is automatically functioning for us and the potential effects they have. And we're not going to go over all this. It's just to give you an idea that there's a lot of things that our brain is doing. And that System 1 is, again, it's all automatic and always on. We cannot turn it off. I think our only hope is to recognize, like we talked about here, some of the major things that are happening and then challenge ourselves. And say, like in this case, now after today, is this a story I made up? Right? Is this really real? What do I know? Right? Like about John and leadership. What do I know about John? I know he talks to people. Well, what the heck does that mean? Right? What does that really matter? Yeah. So once you start to think about it that way, kick in that kind of rational System 2, I think we can make changes. But again, as we talked about at the beginning, we have to make the effort. And that's not easy, because System 2 is lazy, right? And it's hard to make effort, but we have to choose to make the effort. And I don't think that's easy. And I don't think it, like I said, I don't think you can walk out of here and everything's perfect, right? I think it takes consistent long-term effort. Consistent long-term recognition and challenging of ourselves. And that's uncomfortable too, right? It's uncomfortable to challenge thoughts I have. Yeah, it is for me too. I wish I could say it's perfect, but it's not. It's not at all. So in general, this is it, right? This is what we are. Our day-to-day life, right, is this result of the unconscious and automatic System 1, but yet the thoughtful, reflective, but constantly lazy System 2. Right? We have that ability. It's just hard to do it. And it's really quite easy to trick it. Right? So what do you see there? Okay. And what is it really? Right? Because once you start to look at it, you know what it is. But what do you see first? Right? You see the obvious story, and then only if you really look at it, you think, wait a minute, maybe that's the moon, right? Yeah, it changes your perspective of it, right? And I think it's surprisingly easy. And sometimes, as with many illusions and stuff, even though we know something, we can't stop our brain from seeing it a certain way. We just can't stop it. Even if we know the lines are the same length and stuff like that, right? Those kind of classic examples. Yeah. Yeah. Something to think about. Something to think about. And that's what I got for you guys. So we're like, we're like 10 minutes early. Woohoo! So we got some time for questions and discussion. A little bit of talk if people have any ideas. Yeah. Hopefully it gives you some ideas to think about. And I give you my email address and my webpage. I don't know if you really care, it's a typical webpage, but yeah. Send me emails and tell me how you're using it. Yeah. So any questions, you guys? Yeah.
Is there a way that we could improve the system too, like in younger children? Like, can we start doing exercises that would strengthen it quicker?
Right, and that's a great question. I mean, I do think that, those children, you gotta remember their brains are just not mature, so we gotta be careful about our expectations, because we can have high expectations and it won't help because they're not gonna be able to do it. But I do think it's wise to remind children, to think about, before you beat up your little brother, what would your little brother feel, But the thing is, they're not ready to really think about that. I mean, I do think anything's trainable because that's the human brain. I mean, we're really learning machines in many ways. I just think you'd have to set it up in a way that's going to be useful or targeted for the age of the child and the maturation of the brain. Yeah, because we tend to expect a lot of children in terms of emotional control, and they're just not ready. I mean, they're just not ready. I mean, in adulthood we have a hard time, right? Yeah. So yeah.
What kind of energy is systems here required to operate? So why do we have to put in effort, and why do you think that contributes toward evolutionary advantage, I guess?
Right. That's a really good question. I mean, to me, and I think to most people that talk about this type of stuff and investigate it, I think that it comes down to this idea that we're the descendants of people who lived when there were really restricted resources. And so it was a constant battle to have enough food, for example, and really to know who to share the food with if you have it. Right? I think that those kind of social aspects of it have a big impact on us now. Right? And I think that because of that, System 1 works very effortlessly so that we're not, imagine if you had to go through every day making a choice about everything in front of you and how exhausting that would be. Right? And I just think that that's what System 1 does, is it takes over a lot of those choices and it makes them for us automatically. Again, for our long ago ancestors, and even for us, it does a really, really good job of keeping us alive. That's its job. Right? It's just that I think in our modern society, it gets tricked a little bit. Right? It's reacting, basically, like I said, a good example is I think it just treats everything like a tiger. But yet, we obviously don't have tigers on our street corners so often, so it's not going to be a tiger, but yet no matter how often you tell it that, it never catches on. It never understands that it's not a tiger, that instead it's an argument with your boss, or your teacher, or your roommate, right? Or your girlfriend or boyfriend. It never understands, and so it's always hyperactivating. And I think therein is part of the issue, is that we've got a part of our brain that we have because it kept us alive. It allowed us to react to the tiger when it was there. Again, we're the offspring of those people, right, that reacted. But now we don't have tigers, but it doesn't get that. Yeah, it doesn't understand. And I think, like I gave you the example of me writing a manuscript or something, literally. I really do think that for many of us, and students, when you're looking, getting ready to study for a test, and it feels so intimidating, I think your brain is thinking it's a tiger. Yeah. One of the things I do in this case, and I bet many of you do this, I call it the trap door exercise. Does anybody? I'll tell you what I mean. So what I do is something like, I'm thinking about manuscripts because that's probably what professors suffer most with in terms of procrastination and delaying. And if I'm looking at a manuscript or something I have to write, and I can just feel myself, I've got to wash a dish, before I do this. Really seriously. Oh, wait. I've got some socks that need to be folded, right? Oh my gosh. When I catch myself doing that, I give myself what I call the 5-minute trap door. And what I'll do is I'll sit down and I think it actually helps to literally set a timer, get out your clock, set your timer, right, your cell phone or whatever, set your timer, sit down, and what I do is I tell myself, sit down and write anything vaguely related to this manuscript at all, anything. Doesn't matter much, it's not going to be good, that doesn't matter. The point is, sit down and start to write something semi-viable, right? The thing, and at that point, then I tell myself, okay, but in 5 minutes I can quit. That's the trap door, right? I can quit. I'm giving my brain an escape from the tiger. I'm saying I could quit after 5 minutes if I'm panicked. And guys, I've been doing this for years. I've never had to use the trap door. Because it takes only a few minutes to stop that stupid reaction from system one. It's a stupid reaction. You're sitting at, I mean, like we said, I'm at my computer with an air-conditioned room. And yet here it is thinking it's a tiger, right? But just sit down. Guys, you try this. I talk about this in my classes. I talk to a lot of students, and I'll have students coming in saying, oh my God, I did that when I was applying to graduate schools, and those applications are saying so much time. And it was so much easier. Because I would just sit down and I would set a timer. And by the way, setting a timer, for reasons I don't think we understand, is surprisingly effective, right? And then see, do you have to walk away after 5 minutes? And if you have to walk away, literally, don't walk away for the rest of your life, probably. That's probably not the best option. But walk away for a little bit, and then come back. And again, 5 minutes, right? Make yourself sit down for 5 minutes. But give your brain that trap door. Say, after 5 minutes, I can leave. We can leave. We're out of here. Right? As I said, I've never had to walk away once I got it started. I really do think it's getting past the tiger. It's not a tiger. But system one is panicked. And it doesn't understand. Yeah, no amount of talking to system one helps. Like, say, it's not a tiger doesn't seem to help me much. But if I could just say, oh, just shut up for a minute, we're going to sit down for 5 minutes, it seems to help. You guys try it. Yeah, let me know. So I think it's effective. Yeah.
This is more of a personal thing, but how would you assess the stress level of the Tigers at this point in their schedule, because they're scoring 3 times as much as their opponents? Would you not say that their stress level is going up?
So he's talking about the Clemson Tigers, I think. It took me a moment to catch on to that. So I was thinking, Tigers in Africa? Wait, I'm confused here. But okay, now we're talking about Clemson football. All good. Yeah. So yeah, because it's interesting, because that last game we only won by a point, right? Pretty scary. I was scared. My heart was pounding. You guys? Yeah, I was like, oh no. Yeah, yeah, because we're ranked number 1 and we should be winning every game by double digits.
2.
Yeah, yeah.
We dropped to 2 today.
Did we? I'm not surprised.
Alabama.
Yeah, well, of course. Who else? I mean, it's always Alabama, right? Yeah, but I'm not surprised, and I suspect I would have done the same thing. I mean, they just played a really good game. But anyway, back to stress. I mean, it is stressful, right? It's stressful, and I think that most students in here who are really like high performers also feel that, right? When you're expected to perform the A because you've always had the A. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Our coach talked about that. It's like, you come in, you're expected to always win by double digits in this case. Yeah, that's a hard one.
That was the way it was with Nebraska
It
when
happens.
Devaney was in.
Right, right, and it happens. And again, they're college students. I mean, yeah, it's hard, right? I feel for those students. That's hard. Yeah, yeah, great question. Okay, another one, yeah.
So you've probably in your life worked through the elephant and the rider model. How do you feel about the idea that reason was kind of originally propagated to justify kind of the animal leanings of System 1?
Oh, that kind of idea. Yeah. I mean, I tend to look at System 1 and System 2, and I think that most psychologists do, but psychologists in the room too. Please feel free to put in your ideas here. But I think that we tend to think about them as like 2 complementary systems, that it's not so much that one was designed in some way to damage or battle the other one, but that in the end, it's just what happened, right? And it was the way that we maintain any level of rational control, I guess, but you gotta remember, I do think that System 1 is running the show unless we're very careful.
Well,
It is running it.
That's the idea, is that System 2 justifies
Right.
what System 1 has to say.
Right, and now I see what you're saying. And it'll do that, right? System 1, okay, and now I understand, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. But yeah, because I do think that System 1 can make up a story is a good idea, where it fits together these odd events, and we do it all the time. Catch yourselves, right? You get a series of events and you'll find yourself making up a story about them. And then System 2, if you ask it, will speak up to rationalize the story that System 1 just made up, right? And it's only like even today we're talking, right? And I said, I don't know if that's really a pattern. Maybe it was just accidental, right? But yet our brain sees it as a pattern. right? And again, I think the only way to challenge it is to force yourself to think, is this really the pattern I think it is? What other explanation could there be? That's another good way, right? Is to force yourself to look and really seek out another story, right? And then challenge that story. That is science. We call them theories, but okay. Theories, stories, yeah. But that is science, right? And that's why science is hard. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. That's a really good one. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think, you gotta be careful, because I do think system 2, I mean, okay, you know, I call it rationalization here. You know, students might call it excuses. Yeah. Think about it. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. Right? Think about it. Yeah. What kind of stories you're telling yourself? Yeah. Yeah, because we do it, and we all do. And again, you know, I say this because I talk to students a lot, but we all do it. I don't care what age we are. I don't care. The only question is maybe, like I said in that one slide, maybe with experience we could just be a little bit more careful about it. Maybe. And it's hard. Yeah. I wish it was easy too. I wish it was. I wish I could say I've got it. Yeah. But I don't think we do. It's fleeting. It's always fleeting. Yeah. That's a kind of Zen side of it, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
You seem to be going against the cultural values, the current cultural values. It feels good to do it.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it feels right, with truthiness, it's right. You don't think about it. Don't think up here, think down there.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, I guess.
I'm not a fan of it either,
Yeah.
but in fact, it's kind of a sales pitch.
And it is. Or like telling people, only get a job that you're going to love or something like that. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. And I'm not against getting a job that you love. That's great. But I think there's an awful lot of jobs out there that aren't going to be loved. Yeah. And yet we need it, and we need people who will do it. And yeah. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of that kind of, you know, that kind of hedonistic almost lifestyle, right? Where everything's got to make me feel right. I mean, again, our brain makes the world seem much more nicer than it is. I don't think there's much nice about the world. There is no fairness, only what we make, right? And only humans make fairness, if you think about it. There's no tiger out there wondering about the fairness of eating an antelope. It's not going to happen. It's just what they do, right? Only humans make that kind of moral judgment of fairness. And I'm glad we do, because it's what keeps our societies working. Because after all, that's why we can drive down the road and not just smash into each other or run over every kid on the bike, right? I mean, well, seriously, right? Think about it. How fast chaos would ensue, right? There's not chaos because for the most part, we all want to be fair, right? But I don't think that fairness is the same as everything being pleasurable or being perfect in some way.
But
I don't think life works that
system 2
way.
being lazy, there's an easier
And that's
path.
exactly.
Do what feels good.
Absolutely, because what feels good is going to be feel easier, therefore feel good, and that's a whole other kind of bias, right? This feels good, this is better, right? Versus something that takes a little bit longer time to study and understand, that feels hard, that's not as good, yeah. But it's absolutely easier if it feels good. But again, I urge you, challenge yourself when you hear yourself thinking that. And think to yourself, just because it's easy, is that what I want? Is it really where I want to be?
That links to the marshmallow study.
And
I
it
was thinking
does. The
about
marshmallow study is an interesting example. Does everybody know what we mean by the marshmallow study? It's so common for psychologists. We just throw it out there. We know what we mean. But that's where they gave it to kids and they said, listen, here's a marshmallow. You can eat it right away. But if you don't eat it, I'll come back in with 5 marshmallows in a minute. Right? And the question was, which kid could wait? Right? Some waited, some didn't. Yeah. And then the follow-up studies, and there was a lot of follow-up studies, so there's a lot going on with this. But many of the follow-up studies indicated that those that waited were more successful in our society, given our society parameters. They were capable of going to school, working hard, waiting to get the job and get the money and get the fame or whatever.
Staying out of jail.
Staying out of jail. There's something staying off of drugs.
Right.
Right? Not falling into the pit of drugs. Because after all, what 16-year-old says, I want to grow up and be a meth addict? That's where I want to be. And yet they're out there, right? Because it was easy. And it was pleasurable. At least for a while, right? I don't think the pleasure lasts that long. Most of them don't report that, but they can't stop. Yeah, but who says that, right? Who says that? Nobody. Yeah, and yet there they are. Nobody even says, I want to grow up and be an alcoholic. Who says that? or, you know, a bum on the street. Who says that, right? Yeah, but it's easier.
System two talking when I want to be successful,
Right.
system one is.
Is saying, yeah, yeah. And if you're not careful, system one will take over. That's my feeling. Yeah. And as I showed in that one picture, it's much more complex than we talked about today, but just some ideas to get you thinking about it, I guess, is the way I look at this. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank everybody for coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's give Dr. Pilcher a round of
Thank you.
applause. We're gonna get her on the Kearney Mountain Lion alert watch list so that she learns that occasionally it really is a tiger.
That's right.
So on that note, everybody have a good night.